afternoon, and welcome to the Middle East Forum's webinar and podcast series, Israel Insider, this week with Alex Selsky. I'm Stacey Roman, and I will be hosting this discussion today. We are pleased to have Alex Selsky, a senior advisor to the Middle East Forum's Israel Victory Project, join us this week to update us on all the events going on in Israel. Mr. Selsky will be giving us a briefing on current Israeli affairs for 15 minutes and open it up for questions. Should you wish to ask a question, please use the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen to type your question. And with that, I will turn the discussion over to Mr. Alex Selsky.
Thank you, Stacey. Thank you. Good evening from Jerusalem for everyone. Well, as you definitely might see, we have today a very sad day because in the morning, the first news that we saw is a very, very tragic terror attack in Jerusalem next to its big religious neighborhood, Ramot. And 19 people were injured, and one 16-year-old boy was eventually dead. Let his memory be blessed. Hashem Yikom Damo, Ari Shupak. And we understand that this terror attack was, of the kind that we remember from 90s, planned, a bomb that was put and operated from far. So it's a very, very bad picture for us, and it came into the intense negotiations for forming the government, which until yesterday was very hard and very intense, but somehow it went on and everybody blamed each other. But today, after this terror attack that hurt the hearts of every Israeli, the negotiations accelerated, and everybody started to speak that we must form a government now because we see that the security challenges are so big. And Itamar Ben-Gvir, as he always does, came to the place of the terror attack and spoke about the need of fighting the terror in a new way, in more aggressive way, meaning, as he calls it, that terror has to pay the price, meaning that to stop, the good conditions of the terrorists in Israeli prisons, and meaning that we have to go back to assassinations of the leadership, that we have to punish the Palestinian Authority, which continues with the incitement within its educational system. So definitely the issue of security, raised up, and we all saw today that everybody is speaking about the very, very fast need to form the government. But yet again, what we saw today, primarily blame trade between Likud and the Atzionut Hadatit, the Zionist religious party headed by Smotrich, and the blame trade only strengthened. And Likud said that Smotrich thinks only about the positions and not about the essence, and definitely Smotrich said exactly the same about Likud. But we do see that slowly but surely things come into place. We see already that apparently Shas and Aryeh Deri got their somehow final position, and what we see from the publications, even though we cannot believe, I think definitely majority of all the publications that we see about the negotiations, because we never know what is true and what is leverage and what is pressure within these negotiations. But we do see that he apparently is back from his demand to take the finance minister and goes back to his traditional ministry that he headed for many years, the internal affairs, but he will be given also the Minister of Religion, which he really wants. And now again, we see all the time, small demands that don't come to resolution. But again, I think that every moment we can hear that the government is for it, because we must understand, uh, at the end of the day, nobody of the players within this Netanyahu and his partners coalition doesn't have another choice. It's either this coalition or going to new elections, because even though Netanyahu in all his previous governments, definitely before 2019, used to take into his coalition somebody from the center left. It was Gantz in only last year. And before that, it was, I remind you that in 15, he had, before 15, he had Livni and Lapid. And before that, he had Avuda and Barak within his coalition of 2009. So he definitely can do that. But I don't see, and I think that nobody can see in this upcoming coalition, this opportunity, because this time he really spoke about going with his only right-wing bloc, and he has enough to form the government. And on one hand, we see that all of them support Netanyahu and support his demands and support his goals. But on the other hand, it's sometimes even more difficult to form a government and to govern with your closest allies, because even though you have a consensus on the policies, maybe not full consensus, but you're definitely closer on the policies with your right wing and ultra orthodox partners than the right left. But on the other hand, remember that they compete on the same voters, on the same target audience. So they must, within these governments, all the time to prove that each one has to prove that it's his success in order to next time take the votes. Now, for Netanyahu, I don't think that, again, we don't know, but many speak about the fact that this is maybe his last term of a prime minister, if this coalition will serve, will survive 3 or 4 years. So he maybe for him it's like the last time, so he has to reach all his goals. But for all the others, definitely for Smotrich and for Ben-Gvir, this is the opportunity to take maximum they can. They were in opposition for almost 2 years. They came to maybe the peak, okay? And many say that they came to their peak, to their maximum power, because of the frustration and the disappointment from the previous government. So they must take maximum power, and they must deliver this time. So, and they will not do it without Netanyahu. And I think they understand that going to another elections, they will not take the same result, because they will be definitely blamed. So everybody understands that that's the coalition they might close, and they go into the closure. So I think we will soon see the government. Now, what are the prices? And this is the very important question. What are the prices and what we can expect from this government at this moment, what we see? And I think that this week can teach us a few things. First of all, I think it shows that even though this coalition is so, has, he's homogeneous and has a consensus, but we see that the fights are very big, and the fights not only personal, but fights on the essence, on the policy. So even though we think today that 64 seats in coalition is wide coalition, but no, first of all, it's not so wide. And I want to remind you that in the end of 2014, Netanyahu fired his justice minister Tzipi Livni and his finance minister Yair Lapid, because he claimed that he cannot govern when they have such a pressure from each side, and she had only 6 then, and Lapid had 19. And for Netanyahu, it was a big partner that was pressing him, and their coalition was then 68. So then he thought that 68 is hard to govern and control. So what about the 64 when everybody pushes on you? Now everybody also understands the coalition partners understand that Netanyahu needs them, and they pressure at maximum, and they know that he can be pressed. And ultra orthodox who are very hungry, and they were in, as we say in Hebrew, the opposition desert. They came back very, very angry and very hungry, and they want to take it all back, what was taken from them by Lieberman and Lapid. So the pressure is very big, and the hunger is very big, and Netanyahu will give them, because he understands that the stability that he needs so much depends on them and not on his party. So he apparently will hurt much of the hunger within Likud, which will create internal opposition within Likud. And we already hear every hour or two, we hear briefings from within Likud that people are so disappointed by him that he gives out everything to the partners and leaves nothing to Likud members. And more than that, I want to remind you that in the beginning of the negotiations, Netanyahu spoke about giving the foreign affairs ministry to Ron Dermer, who you definitely know well. Now, it shows two things, I think, about what Netanyahu plans. First, I think it can teach us that the policy is not less important for him at this term than the politics, because he takes someone whom he really trusts in policy toward the United States, even though he understands that this nomination will really hurt the Likud ministers, because they will feel that he doesn't count them. And even though, and now if he will not give it to Ron Dermer, so he will, I think, hurt twice. He didn't achieve what he wanted, and he hurt the people by the very consideration of this nomination. But I think, again, that the even thinking about Ron Dermer shows how important United States will be for him, how important Iran will be for him, how he will concentrate on maybe even helping the next Republicans who will run on behalf of Republican Party, definitely to Trump, even though I'm not sure what are their relations today. And how for him this will be a very major front. What else I think is also important is what we can see about the agenda and about what we can expect. We see the majority of the fight, majority of the briefings and the fight between the members on the finance ministry. Now, everybody understands, maybe until this morning, that the major thing that hurts Israelis today is the economy, the inflation, the prices. Tel Aviv is the most expensive city on earth at the moment, to large extent because of a very stable status of the shekel. But anyway, Israelis pay more and more every day, and the economy is what hurts. Definitely, security is here to stay. And sometimes we think that security, we don't feel it, but this terror attack definitely reminded us that security is here to stay, and that Palestinians are here to stay, and that the Palestinian issue will not disappear, and that Israel must defeat the Palestinians. And we definitely see people within this coalition and government that understands that the policy should be different. And we really hope that Netanyahu, as he did to every hawk that he had in the last 10 years, Bogi Ayalon, and then Lieberman, and then Bennett, and he neutralized each one of them. So I think we will definitely see pressure from the right, from Ben-Gvir and Smotrich on Netanyahu. But I don't know if Netanyahu will be able to really change policies, and we know that because we saw the previous times of of people who pressed him from the right, but were neutralized very easily by him. I think that I'm close to 15 minutes. Stacy, tell me if I have more time, or we will just pass to questions, please.
Well, if you have more to add, we can certainly take a few more minutes towards that.
Well, maybe a very important and very major point that we must see on the political map today, and we see that definitely from the negotiations, is how central is the issue of religion and state. And we see how big is the fight, for example, on the Ministry of Religious Affairs between Shas and Smotrich. Now, this is a very important issue, and it becomes more and more important issue in the Israeli society. I think I'll try to really make it brief. I think that the new divider, the new division, the major division between right and left, is not a security issue. I think that security issue overall has reached some broad consensus. I think majority of Israelis today, and definitely political leaders, even in the center and center left, even agree on overall that we must fight Iran, that we must, not promote the Palestinian state and fight the terror. Definitely people will argue on how to do that, but the major division within the society is the Jewish character of the state, the Jewish identity of the state, the Allahic issues, and one of the major yesterday topics that were in the news from the negotiations, something I think just few years ago it was so minor, but Smotrich wanted to demanded that the division between the gender division in religious events will not be considered as illegal, because today in many places when religious, let's say a religious singer or a group of religious Orthodox women wants to have a separated event, a municipality may say that it's not illegal and they must open it, even though this is a small group and nobody will come to this event except those women. So what he wanted is that this kind of event will not be considered as illegal. All the discourse, not all, but definitely majority of the discourse yesterday in the media was that, Iran is here and Israel becomes Iran, and we all are now under Orthodox, halachic pressure, and, secular people will not be able to live in Israel. Now, this is not definitely the intention and not the situation, but the issue between the secular and the religious, and definitely the ultra-Orthodox, is so, it's so hot, so dividing, so it hurts people on the both sides so much. And the demographics are, demographics go with the ultra-Orthodox, and we see in every field of life, in culture, in TV, that people are more and more and more and more traditional, more and more religious, and we see, more and more left-wing, very liberal singers who start wearing kippas and sing to religious crowds, and go to the Judea and Samaria and to ultra-Orthodox crowds, and they say, like Aviv Geffen, who was a symbol of liberal Tel Aviv, anti-IDF, anti-territories, anti right wing, and he a few months ago had a concert with ultra orthodox star singer Avraham Fried in religious one of the major religious settlements in Judea and Samaria, Bet El, next to Ramallah, with a kippah on his head, saying, "I am sorry. It was my mistake many years ago to hurt your feelings. I have changed." So these issues are very, very central today, and we will see a huge fight over these issues, I think, much more than the Palestinians even, but the security will not leave us, and security will remind itself, as we saw just this morning, every time, and everybody who thinks that, we live our life and Palestinians don't exist anymore, he will be very, very painfully reminded about the reality, unfortunately, as today.
All right, thank you so much. So on that point, Eric asks, when a remote control bomb goes off, how can Israel stop the bombs or capture the terrorists who exploded the bombs? Will there be any sort of military operations in response to this?
It's a very, very good question. First of all, Israel launched few small operations already in Judea and Samaria. I just remind you that a few months ago, we had a new terror group within Nablus, Shechem, very aggressive, with the kind of tactics of Islamic Jihad 10 years ago, and Israel with few very, very precise operations, just we killed two of the leaders, and then one of them was captured by Israelis. So just demolished the whole unit within a few weeks. We see Israel operations very precise in Jenin, but people do ask, as exactly as you, if there is no time for a new big operation like defensive shield, which we remember that Sharon launched. And we, by the way, Israel Victory Project had a whole conference in May marking 20 years to defensive shield, and asking ourselves if this is not time for another defensive shield too, and what was then in the defensive shield operation that had this victory over terror for almost a generation. But now there is another generation that doesn't remember already the defensive shield. Those guys who are today 19 and 20, and they're already leaders of these militants, they don't remember that. So definitely, I think that the operation will be on the table, definitely with Ben Gvir and Smotrich coming into the government, I'm sure. But again, I don't know, we saw so many hawks coming with so much energy into the government, and many words within the election campaigns don't necessarily mean much after, and we already saw that. So unfortunately, I'm more cautious and not pessimistic, but definitely we have to see, because Netanyahu again knows how to neutralize those hawks. So let's see. Definitely, I think it will be on the table.
Thank you. Robert Slater asks, how strained do you think the Netanyahu-Biden relation will be, especially regarding Iran and the Abraham Accords?
I personally believe that personal relations are not so central in international relations and in relations between countries. I think that after all, leaders know how to play friendship when they need it and how to play rivalry when they need it. After all, it's all about interests, primarily internal interests. I think that we definitely can see, as we speak, Israeli chief of staff is now visiting Washington and apparently planning or coordinating attempts, plans, I don't know, about Iran. Otherwise, why Israeli chief of staff, while being in Washington, says that we reached the critical point of Iran to be ready to develop the nuclear bomb. So I think that after all, we all speak about bad relationships and Democrats, that not liking Netanyahu. I think that after all, if the interests will be really so close, they will definitely work together. The midterm elections are over. Biden, for good and for bad, has now stable situation for at least a year. This year will be very, very crucial. So I think they will work by the interests, and again, I think but again, I'm sure that Netanyahu sees, looking forward for the elections for the presidency already. And yes, waiting. I mean, he doesn't hide this, waiting for Republicans. Again, I'm not so sure if he is waiting so much for Trump. So, Haley and DeSantis are very, very close friends of Israel. DeSantis was, I want to remind you, a co-chair of the Israel Victory Congressional Caucus, the first one. So we Israel Victory Project and Middle East Forum definitely know how DeSantis is good and close. About Haley, I don't think that I have to bring any proofs. So they will work when it's about interest, and they will fight when it's about interests. And I also believe that much of the political fights are theatrical and for the very fight. And I saw many times within Israeli politics, while being advisor of Netanyahu, how he was fighting, in front of the cameras, somebody, and shouting at him, and then sitting and sipping some, coffee and wine in the cafeteria in the Knesset just 10 minutes after. And it was without words, coordinated fight, because it served each one of them.
Absolutely. Thank you. An anonymous attendee asked, does the quality and knowledge of individuals influence the choice of their selection for ministerial posts, or is the coalition building done strictly by political consideration?
Oh, that's a good question. I would like to tell you that that the personal ability is the one that leads, but unfortunately, I think that in this structure, in this regime of parliamentary democracy, after all, Netanyahu needs his partner to be stable and to be loyal. So if the leader is providing the stability, but will be a bad minister, so Netanyahu catches, reaches two objectives. He also gets the loyalty, and he also hurts the rival, political rival, because I remind you that at the elections, the hardest rival is the closest partner, because after all, you cannot take voter, if you're right wing, from somebody who is very, very different from you, from left. You can take a voter from somebody who is very close to you. So the closest partners in the closest ideological partner, he's the biggest political rival. So yes, if they say that, I want to remind you that Aryeh Deri sat in the jail for what? For corruption. And now we speak about nominating him to Minister of Finance. He will not be, apparently, also because of the opinion of the legal advisor to the government, who said that it's not possible. I think they can fight it, but apparently they don't go for it. But I think that for Netanyahu to give him the finance minister is a perfect trick. Deri will be satisfied and loyal, and everybody will shout on Deri. So the next time he will go down. That's Netanyahu.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We've come to the close of our webinar and podcast. Alex, thank you so much for taking time to update us this week.
Thank you. And let's hope that tomorrow we'll have a stable government that will bring policies and bring Israel victory.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Of course, for our viewers and listeners, we will not be having a webinar on Friday. For those of you in the States, I wish you a very happy Thanksgiving. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks.